part of our economy. 10% of the GDP is insured by industry. Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes is the first industrial region. In France, I know it's the case for the three other regions here, but it's not because we are very much state of art from an industrial point of view that we are not facing issues due to COVID in particular. Because in our respective territories, we've seen significant lackings and missings. The absence of face masks or even PCR tests. We've clearly understood that within globalization, we focus too much on relocation, and the idea is to bring things back to our regions here. And the presidents of these four regions obviously are going to be talking about the subjects this afternoon. And Stephanie Pernod, who's the first vice president in charge of economy, reshoring and regional preference of Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes, the support of President Laurent Wauquiez. She will be speaking to us this afternoon. She's got a major plan, which really is extremely important for the whole of France. A lot of means and resources are made available to encourage investment and to favor industrial development in our region, which is why I particularly would like to thank uh, the presence of the president of the MEDEF Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes, which is the Employers Association. He will be able to show the commitment of the companies to further develop employment and enable the families in France, and in particular of the Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes, to be able to flourish here and to further develop and having quality jobs, industrial jobs in particular, because here we are pro industry, we want to support industry, we want industry, we consider that economic development requires industry. So I really wish you an excellent afternoon. And as I know, very important topics will be covered. There will be some cross-linking, and we should be able to share best practices, and we'll see what we've been able to put in place in our respective regions. We'll have the official launch of the company passport, which will be presented by our economic development agencies, which is a very important moment for all of us. And defense, we as we say, we need to continue to move forward, even though the international context is very difficult in the region of Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes, but we've decided to focus on three pillars here to develop our economy. The French-speaking community, then afterwards what we call in the international key accounts. We can't have globalization without an exchange with major countries like the United States, China, Japan, South Korea, and others, but also a third pillar, which is just as important, and that's the European pillar. This market that's so important for all our companies here, and with the four motors, the four engines here, we are really at the spearhead of things here. And our regions are the most industrial regions of the EU. So have an excellent afternoon, and don't worry. After the storm, we always have nice weather, and we should end up with a blue sky. So I'm optimistic in the midterm, even in the short term. Things are complicated. We need to give room to international diplomacy to solve the conflicts. And when we've got women and men with a strong determination, we should be able to take a positive move forward. And I'm sure there are many of us who want to move forward in a positive way. We should be able to establish peace on our European continent, which is so dear to all of us. Thank you very much, Philippe Barrier. Round of applause here for this opening. Now, it's already springtime, as we can see here. It's nice and sunny here in Lyon. And now, just some household issues. There was some sound issues who are listening to us in terms of the four motors for Europe. Thank you for all being with us. Simultaneous translation here, so you can click on the map, on the world map, which is just below, and you can choose the language you want here. And you can also leave your questions online here. You can answer. Now, we clearly want to respect the health protocol. In the assembly, we've got economic stakeholders, we've got elected officials and then institutional representatives and people who will be listening in. We've got Bruno Caravini, who's head of international relations within the region Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes. He'll provide his feedback at the end of our session, and that will be around 5 to 4. Let's move on. The first exchanges when we're going to be talking about cross perspectives on attractiveness, reshoring, and industrial independence here. Got many speakers both here and throughout Europe. Stephanie Pernaud, she is online with us. She's the first Vice President in charge of economy, reshoring and regional preference of Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes. Let's check the connection. Yes, well, hello, everybody. I'm very happy to participate to this session. We'll be right back with you. We'll just introduce the other people. Jean-Luc Ronichet, who's president of the MEDAF, Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes, which is the first employers association in France, and he's directly with us here. Hello, Mr. Jean-Luc Ronichet. Going to switch your mic on the. Yes, hello, everybody. So that works. That's for Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes. Let's go to the south of Germany and listening to Baden-Württemberg. Hello, Patrick Rapp, State Secretary from the Ministry of Economic Affairs, Labour and Tourism. Hello, everybody. Fine, great. And in French as well. Thank you very much here. And Mr. Wolfgang Wolf, CEO of UBW Unternehmer Baden-Württemberg. They're a leader in the Baden-Württemberg. The members are the sector leaders in the industrial sector. Mr. Wolf, can you hear us? You'll be back with us a bit later on here. Sorry, it's live. Just tell me once we get hold of Wolf. Roger Torrent, Minister of Business and Labour of Catalonia. Welcome. Hello to everybody. We're here with you. We're here in Catalonia, still with Mr. Salvador Guillermo, Deputy Secretary General and Director of Economy of Formentel Tribal, the employers and major employers association in Catalonia. Yes, hello everybody. Fine, very good. And we will finish with Lombardy. Buongiorno to Mr. Guido Gesto, Regional Minister of Economic Development of Lombardy. Can you hear us? Yes, sir. Thank you, and hello to all of you. Thank you, great. And Francesco Bogella, President of Coffee Industria Lombardia. Bene, is everybody here? Are you with us? Oh, in a couple of minutes' time. Okay, it doesn't matter. We'll have everybody with us in the coming minutes here. Stephanie Pernaud. We've established a connection again with you. Stephanie, this Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes region voted last December a strategic reshoring plan or relocation plan. What are the main axes to achieve this goal of reconquest of regional industrial sovereignty? Well, last December, the President Laurent Wauquiez wanted to vote a plan which we called a relocation plan or reshoring plan with three major objectives, which we will be pursuing for the coming 3 to 4 years. So the first one is to secure our industrial companies. These companies faced significant issues during the COVID period. We wanted to provide continuous support from the Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes region and help them to develop their development and their growth. Obviously, we want to ensure recovery. The second goal of this plan was to implement a relocation and reshoring of industrial activities that currently don't exist in our region or which left many years ago for different reasons. But nowadays, following this health crisis, these activities want to come back to our region because we've got a highly structured industrial network. And the third goal is to provide very tangible tools to our company so we can support them using investment mechanisms for their equipment and their material, and also supporting them in terms of human resources, also through training and recruitment. We are lacking industrial hiring. This plan and the goal is to bring activity back here to make sure that this activity can last over time and you develop growth here. Stephanie, you mentioned this. We just would like to find out a bit more about these tangible tools which you want to deploy within this regional plan. Can you give us some examples here? Well, for example, we've created what we call a relocation pack or reshoring the pact here. It's a whole range panel of mechanisms companies can use. They can be combined, they can be deployed on a standalone basis, otherwise, depending on the needs of the company. When the companies ask for support, we are there, and especially to support them over time. A lot of mechanisms that enable to meet all possible demands here. We've put in place what we call the G6 of relocation of reshoring. It's a kind of club will include all companies who are creating a new activity and are relocating activities back to our region. People who are bearing projects and upholding projects, they are putting in place. So tangible tools here. It's true that the industrial sector is crucial if we want to maintain our independence. The region is supporting their projects, but according to you, what are the key barriers and the key issues we need to meet and overcome here? Well, there are two major problems we are facing. The first one is recruitment. We've got a lot of people missing here. Number two is land, property. It's very difficult to find available land in our region here. Uh, sorry, you can probably have a drop of water. Yes, sorry. I was going to, it's extremely difficult to find any land. We are lacking industrial property, industrial land. And tomorrow we want to be able to offer land to people who want to come to our region. We'll give you a bit of a time to breathe here because obviously you're not present with us here. You were tested positive. You were supposed to be with us in person, but unfortunately you tested positive to COVID. So you're speaking to us from home. So just have a drink of water and then you can come back. Now, practical information, by the way, please mute your mics when you're not speaking and to make sure we don't have any interference. Let's move on to Catalonia. Let's move on to Roger Torrent, who is Minister of Business and Labour of Catalonia. What's the strategy of your government in terms of attractiveness, in terms of reshoring and industrial independence? Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for inviting us here and for organizing this session. And you, the region, Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes, has taken over the presidency from Catalonia here. Now, currently, we are fully aware of what Europe is doing in terms of supporting reshoring and relocation here. And we're talking about putting in place a definite new strategy, this determination to reshore and relocate things back to Europe here, in particular in the industrial sector in Europe. In Catalonia, we want to participate to this approach. And we want to come back to our historic foundation. And I think everything is in place to be able to pursue our efforts and to move forward and to be able to transform this production model here and to develop a resilience and make sure that people are put back in the center of things here. We've got various tools that the Catalan government has put in place through an agency in particular called Axio for some time now. And even the Financial Times mentioned that agency as being one of the best foreign investment agencies in Europe. We want to take advantage of the money made available and the tools to be able to relocate, bring activity back to our region. And as I said, we want to develop a strategic independence. Today, industry represents 20% of the GDP, but we want to move up to 25%, which means we need to have a situation with much more industrial clout. We want an industry that can attract significant investments. Between 2016 and 2020, investments, foreign investments in Catalonia have grown by 70%. So we're talking a 70% increase here. And in particularly, thanks to this tool called Axio, this investment agency, and works closely with the social and economic stakeholders like Foment, who's present with us today. In all cases, we are talking about a structuring aspect and element and mechanism, but we are facing some emergency issues here due to the lack of supply here and the lack of soaring due to the amazing increase of energy costs. Those are things that are endangering the very structure of our companies and industrial companies in particular. We've started working with what we call a single point access here to be able to help companies find solutions here. Obviously, the energy costs have increased greatly here, has impact on all production elements, and it also has an impact on production in general and families as well. From a structural point of view, we are working with tools where we want to be able to capture foreign investment, but we also try to provide an answer to this difficult economic situation. It's interesting what you're saying, talking about the initiatives which you just mentioned, and to talk about you've got this kind of help desk, if I'm not mistaken, which you've put in place. Can you tell us a bit more about this help desk that's there to support companies to face their high energy cost here? Yes, well, we are talking about a tool, an ad hoc tool, which is there to help companies. On the one side, it's to help companies find alternatives by providing them with other service providers and other suppliers from other markets. So people and companies can get energy and commodities at a lower price. And the idea is to have raw material and commodities at a lower price here. And also just to actually get access to them. And that was actually before the situation in the Ukraine, before Russia invaded Ukraine. Things were already a bit difficult, but things are obviously a bit worse. But the tool was already in place before this war here. Sorry, the slide problem? Sound problem?
nous destins, nous mercats, alternatives de provisió, per exemple.
The idea is to find alternatives here, to find new sourcing, in particular in the agro-food sector, which is very powerful in the Catalonia region, which strongly depends on the imports of grain, of wheat from Russia and Ukraine. 50% of all cereals, human consumption, or cereals necessarily for cattle feed. 50% comes from those two markets, from Russia and Ukraine. So we need to find alternatives and other sources here. And we are helping companies to find these alternative companies here. Thank you very much, Roger Doran, for your explanations. Let's go a bit further north and let's move on to Baden Ruthenberg. Let's move on to Dr. Patrick Rapp, State Secretary for the Ministry of Economic Affairs. Your economic development policies aim on the one hand to make the territory more attractive, on the other hand to create suitable framework conditions for business investment. Could you tell us what do you mean by suitable framework conditions? Patrick Rapp, are you online with us? I was told yes. Ah, yes, there he is. Thank you very much for this question. For this session, thank you for having organized it, and thank you for ensuring the presidency of the foremost. Now, talking about the favorable conditions here, our considerations are really tangible. We've got different sides. We've got neighboring lenders that are competitors, like the Baviera region. Baviera lender, we have to offer an encouraging framework to our companies. We clearly need to make available land, property, industrial services, buildings, so companies can actually work in good conditions here. Second point, infrastructures and transport, which we want to further improve. And from the conditions are quite the same from one part of our region to the other. We want to create an environment that's going to be favorable to attract labor here, and so we can maintain labor in our lender. Obviously, this refers to issues in terms of training, apprenticeship, the link with universities, with higher education in general here. And as far as technology and innovation, there really is a key factor we are focusing on. Our ministry is also responsible for tourism. We are working on the attractiveness for people who decide to come work in our region, and also show that there are tourist opportunities. So a favorable framework obviously makes a territory more appealing. Now, example, since May 2020, your ministry has been working on supply chain issues. Could you tell us a bit more about that? Yes, in Germany, at national level, so at federal level, we we are a kind of single point of access, a kind of single desk for supply chain issues. So when there have been problems, the idea is to improve supply to the Baden-Württemberg region. We want to beef up the various networks and to have a kind of single desk point of access for companies. So companies know where they can get help from and who to appeal to, and in particular when they're looking for further partners elsewhere in Europe. They can also make sure that they can have contact people from a logistic point of view. I'm considering have in mind here the pandemic, but also what's going on in Ukraine. We have to totally review contacts in terms of closeness and proximity throughout Europe. We have to create new supply chains. These are significant issues as Ministry of Economy. We need to be able to support companies from this point of view. And European cooperation is thus very important. Now, Patrick Rapp, broadly speaking, what major challenges are the key industries in Baden-Württemberg are facing today, and how can they actually be addressed, and how are you addressing them? Us, like the three other motors, we've are facing the same challenges, similar challenges. We've got we're very strong in the car industry, in the health industry. The challenges are digital transformation here. We've got a lot of countryside, so you know the dark forest here, the black forest, and we need to come up with digital solutions here. And we've also got other issues here as far as lacking qualified people here. We are deploying significant efforts here where we are strengthening cooperation with schools, universities, training centers, industry, SMEs, etc. The idea is to become more efficient and display better performance. We are also facing sourcing issues, as we've all seen. A transformation is taking place due to digitalization of our economy, but also we are facing decarbonation issues. Obviously, sustainable development is crucial here, which means we are there to provide the necessary support. We're also facing issues in terms of mobility, logistics, transport. All of that has to be totally reviewed. We need to provide solutions in terms of mobility. Certain solutions have already put in place in cooperation with the various companies here. And we are also deploying a European project and we are committed to ensure better networking to be able to solve any problems that may arise and to be able to face things jointly. Thank you very much. We've taken stock of this situation. That's the very goal of our session. Thank you very much, Patrick Harper. We'll be back with you in a couple of minutes' time. Let's move on to Lombardia here.
Le ministre régional.
The regional minister Guido Guidese. Thank you very much for connecting here, sir. Thank you for following us direct from here. You were present in the room at the regional hall. Now we're talking about strategies for relocation. The Lombardy region has dealt with the attractiveness or attractiveness of the regional plan. Sorry, there was a bit of a problem. Hello, Guido. Did you hear me? Did you hear my question? Thank you. Now, before we have a strategy dedicated to, we do hope that we'll do great work. Everyone will do great work for this new presidency of the Four Motors. Now, we have a project on attractiveness or seductiveness and the appeal that's part of a package, Invest in Lombardy. It's a package that works well. We're updating it. We always update it, taking into account real requirements and economic demands. And we've already filled in with certain activities concerning attractiveness. We also have certain areas, for example, logistics, on which we can realize investments for production, let's say, investments in production. And it's the local communities that are undertaking these endeavors. Now, working in cooperation with these small communities and towns in urbanization to protect these zones. We're also working hand in hand with all social professional categories and those who are working in the field of attractiveness concerning our region. Thank you very much for we'll have this during the presentation of the passport for our four motors, our four regions. Back to what Stephanie Permot said, the question of land and real estate and training, are these major preoccupations for your region? Is that it? Yes, really, truly. Now, we're working on two main points. First of all, training. so as to set up an adequation between the offer and the supply and demand. And in this endeavor for improvement, we're also doing our utmost to increase the intervention of companies in training, in the training of our young people. Likewise, we've also decided to change our view of things. Now, our view is no longer just one that is totally focused on companies. There's also a view of the industries and the production systems of Lombardy. In other words, competitive sectors and sectors of belonging. Now, our idea is to use these channels, these industries and channels, and we hope to use them in a private approach. And we want to help on a public level to compensate for every shortcoming in these industries and channels. And we want to work in innovation, in research, and in applied research as well. We also are doing our utmost to attract new investments because we want to have complete industries, and we want people to invest in our region, to have everything from professional training on through to applied research. And then in that way, we'll be able to prepare for the arrival of new products on the market. That would be our cutting edge. And we also have our limits. Now, our limits are mainly the shortcoming of fiscal initiatives. We do not have enough fiscal resources or financial resources to allow us to use our resources to the best of their potential for other investments, and also to be able to complete these packages. This is why we are working directly with the central government for this purpose. Now, we're using a lot of examples and facts here to showcase this. Now, there was recently a survey on the political economy of Milano. Can you tell us about some of the conclusions that were drawn from this survey, please? This survey was carried out by Confindustria. And there were also main universities participating among the 15 universities we have on our territory now, especially the Polytechnic School. This survey had to do with attractiveness and relocation. And in this survey, in this study, I think there are elements that will soon be out of date because we have carried out certain actions to assist companies to invest, saying invest in our territory, but there was a kind of sluggishness on behalf of the regional bodies, and who are not quick enough to, or reactive enough to react to these problems of energy and lack of raw materials. So we really need a lot more cooperation here. Now, soon, basically we're on time, so in a few short minutes, we'll be talking once again about relocation and attractiveness and industrial sovereignty with our main participants who are connected, and also people who are here in the room, Jean-Luc Onichia from the MEDEF. Now, Francesco Buzella, you're president of this organization, the Confindustria of. It's an agency of Lombardy, but you're also an industrialist in the chemical field. Mr. Buzella, please tell us more about what you do to ensure the central place of this big engine at the center of the economy. Hi, everyone. Hello. Thank you very much. And really, I hope we'll work well together today. And does everybody hear me? Yes, we hear you. Now, thank you. Because now I'm United States. I'm at in the United States. I'm not in Lombardy, so I'm relocated, really. Yeah, that's truly relocation. Yes. Now, about relocation, therefore, relocation, in my opinion, has become a very important and a very present day theme downstream from problems linked to the pandemic. The pandemic allowed us to discover certain risks, inherent risks. In other words, the fact of having to delegate to other countries, countries far from Europe, to delegate certain productions that then turned out to be extremely essential for our own regions. So this means that we have to redesign and rethink our development models. We set up a global development model with value chains and the supply chains that were worldwide. Nonetheless, these have been disrupted and stopped very brusquely, and this has really showcased our fragility. Lombardy has plenty of examples of companies that have applied relocation in the last few years. These are companies that are not necessarily very big, perhaps mid-sized companies, but they wanted to take their production and bring it back to the national soil, national land for questions of numbers of workers and quality. Now, what I want to say is that the global deliberation that we must carry out on all of our continents, especially with the 4 industrial motors of Europe that are really the state of the art of manufacturing in the European continent. What we need to do is to do a real in-depth analysis of all the production chains so as to pick up what we've lost over the last few years and also look at what needs to be brought back onto the European continent so that we can acquire autonomy and independence that is so necessary today. Today, we can no longer think as we previously thought, having to do with microprocessors or other components for chemistry and mechanics, mechanical field as well. We can no longer just think that we're going to be able to subcontract everything to others, subcontract this production, because at the critical point in time and at the point of difficulty in time, we discovered that we were really at a loss. So what does this mean? This relocation, the fact of bringing productions back onto our own national production fields. This necessarily means that we have to create the right conditions and create real seductive power, real appeal that was mentioned by Mr. Guidesi just a few brief minutes ago. We need to create conditions, and there's a real political determination here to target industries, to really count on industry and to involve the industry. So they're going to be basic conditions. For example, energy is a real important point right now. And so the companies will need to decide where the agents will need to decide that they want to invest in the European continent. And this is what was missing until now. Industry has to be seen as a real political development and an industrial and just economic point of development for Europe. Now, the commitment that I request of everyone is to work in that very direction. Francesco Buzzello, one certainty, industrial relocation for you is an opportunity that must be grasped. Is that it? Above and beyond, just politics and attractiveness, you must seize this opportunity. Is that it? That is absolutely, yes, you've hit it on the head. We must grasp this opportunity. We must gamble. We must focus on this relocation and the world, in the World Sphere as well. Now, thank you very much. Stay online. We'll be back in a few seconds in Lombardy, US, Lombardy. We know you're in the US now. For everyone who's watching here, please continue to write us your questions on the chat online. And at the end, we will answer these questions. And I've got everything. I've got translation in my ear right now. And I'm looking at you, Jean-Luc Ronichet. You're the president of MEDEF, Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes, and you're also an industrialist or an entrepreneur. We know that the area is very much concerned by this topic that we're talking about today, and you're a real industrial pioneer with Pomodip as one of the 600 companies of France, which is a guaranteed French origin label. So now, what for you are the conditions or factors of success that might incite companies to produce locally? Jean-Luc Ronichet. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone who spoke until now. Thank you to the region for welcoming us here, Philippe and Stephanie, and thank you very much. Now, if you just allow me an aside, delocation was said earlier on. This intervened about 30 years ago, started up 35 years ago, and it was actually part of a theory in France. I think it became a worldwide theory, at least in Europe and in France for sure. The idea was that one could, and we're reminded by history cruelly, that one could live in a globalized world and a happy globalized world. Now, I'm talking about France here and the region. We would have kept insurance or research, innovation, development, but not production per se. And we even imagine that we might conserve or maintain research and development and still be innovative and still allow people to produce elsewhere, thinking that maybe it was more value added things that we're doing here. So this work for part of humanity that we didn't really seem to care that much about. So the Asian countries and others, Now this understanding, thank goodness we've come to this understanding, this collective understanding now. A lot of people have understood finally that it's better to produce in France, remain in France, and of course, and in Europe. Therefore, this understanding was accentuated by the COVID crisis and even more with this crisis of war in Ukraine. Now, of course, we have very great thoughts for the suffering of these Ukrainians, men and women, of course. This just reminds us that economic sovereignty, production in France and in Europe is totally essential. Now, your question had to do with factors of relocalization or reindustrialization. Now, we can't be naive here. I totally buy into this idea of relocation. It sounds like a marketing term, actually. It's a little bit marketing wise, because to relocate to France and in Europe, I believe, given a number of configurations, the competitive factors have to be different from those existing in other countries. Because if labor, we're talking about labor, the cost of work in France is not the cost of labor in Bangladesh or China or many other African countries. This means relocate means to find competitive edges, digitalization, robotization, once again, digitization to be allowed, that will allow us to be as competitive as possible. I'm going to talk about France and I'm going to talk about the Rhône-Alpes, Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes area. Now, there should be a drop in taxes for production. Not so good on this in France. And also this also involves the fact that we're not the only ones dealing with a lack of skill sets. We have an endemic rate of unemployment in France, and everybody's hiring in public services and industry, 10,000 jobs in the digital domain in Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes, and we don't have enough skilled people. Now, another thing that's less visible has to do with real estate, land, because of course, sustainable development is something that is important to us. So to make sure that you've got clean, good soil and ground when you're starting in the installation of a company, this is something, there's a question of the environment and of water too. Now, for me, there's a problem that we must address because everybody's talking about relocating and reindustrialization, but it has to be acceptability. And since we've gotten unused to industry globally, it looks like a nuclear power plant. Everybody talks everybody basically wants nuclear, but you don't want it in your backyard. You don't want that right next door. And we see this very much today. We've got very concrete cases that we are struggling with when you want to install an industry on a territory. It's not that easy. The public powers are not always behind it, these ideas, because they don't necessarily want that factory right there on their land. And the citizens as well do not yet have this conviction that it's totally essential to the sovereignty, the economy, and jobs. Now, you also drew our attention to the presence of these blind angles in relocation. What are these blind angles? Well, the blind points, blind spots are these. I've got this concept. I'm not the only one. With Laurent Wauquiez, we have many things we agree on. With creation of a regional sovereign fund that the president of the region really wanted. And in this, we are working hand in hand. The companies of France are working on this to attempt in this funding. Now I'm talking about investment here. I'm approaching this from an investment point, investing in companies in the territories. We want them, not everything is going to happen in Lyon, not in the big metropolitan areas, not in Milan or elsewhere. In Barcelona, the territories need to live and breathe. And we've experienced this very much. And I think others have experienced this too. There is a territorial divide where citizens don't find themselves in these advantages. So you've got to establish yourself in the territories that are the hinterlands of the Republic. Now, this is a problem of real estate and water as well, because when you install a company, you need water, you need energy, you need power. And you said there are plenty of power issues right now. So there's so many factors that intervene when a family wants to move to the hinterlands or somewhere far away that is so gorgeous, might be in the Allier or in the Cantal areas. For those of you who are French and know a lot about France, these are beautiful spots, but when you're trying to get a family with kids to live in a spot far away, you've got to have, schools, you have to have educational potentials, you've got to have a high school, you've got to have possibilities for the kids doing studies. So these factors of reindustrialization are many, and one blind angle is the one I just mentioned. We hear you talking about the blind spots, and we'll find competitive factors. Now, thank you very much. Stay with us. Quick connection to Catalonia. Salvador Guillermo, you are working with Raymond de Fontabal. Now, your organization is working with the MEDEF in the FUDER, with 5 European unions and industrial leaders. Now, what are the advantages for a company to relocate its activities? Thank you so much. Thanks for allowing me to speak here. I also wanted to emphasize one point after your question, that this fact of talking about relocating goes hand in hand with value and the capacity of being extremely reactive. It's like the idea is not just to pick up economic activities if these activities are not competitive. Now, if we are able to do this, succeed with this, we can improve and amplify this relocation process. To be attractive, one must have on hand all types of resources, as ones we mentioned for Germany, let's say. But we shouldn't just pick up, we shouldn't forget one portion, just portion of what we have already. As my French colleague said, luckily, we have higher salaries in our countries, but this sometimes is a problem. And the health crisis has really pinpointed this problem. The safety measure, the safety margin of having one's own supply chain, a reliable supply chain. So one sees that these difficult situations can occur even more intensely than what we might have ever have imagined. Now, what we need to have are different types of reserves of these types of materials. If these materials are made closer to home, then it's going to be easier for us to feel that we're in a secure position. There's the questions of certification, quality. Therefore, all of the products that are intervening in an industrial process need certification concerning the quality of these products. So there are very important elements that need to be implemented to facilitate this relocation in our territories. And this also must be done on the basis of greater appeal, attractiveness, as was said by my Italian colleague. So the availability of the industrial sector, and this was also mentioned by the Germans. Now, there's also the issue of the ecology and the environment. We have to be reasonable locally and think in a global manner. Therefore, one should not close one's eyes to consequences to the environment, just pretending that the one is competitive. So we've got an economic policy and a social policy needs to be implemented to encourage these actions. Now, with this policy that shall have been granted, we developed a platform in Catalonia combining 1,000 companies with services in English as well. These are companies that were selected by the industrial sector that provide the most jobs and have a good impact, as well as companies that have turnover above a certain threshold. This will allow you to find a great contact, a great business partner in Catalonia, because we pre-selected these candidates. Now, just very briefly, so that we can stay on time, one brief question. I know there's plenty of success stories of companies who relocated to Catalonia. Could you please just mention one and how and why it succeeded? 30 seconds, please. Just a success story of one company you want to showcase here. There were many relocation processes that were undertaken. Could be complicated or not. In the health sector, there were textile companies as well that work a lot in Asia, and they relocated or reindustrialized some activities in Catalonia. And there, they rely on the supply chain, and therefore this increases costs. So the products on the international market. Sentence was not finished. Thank you very much. Thank you. Stay with us. Now, talking about the supply chain as well. Wolfgang Wolf, President of Ruthenberg of the UBW. Yes, I know the resilience or the sturdiness of supply chains is something you really place a lot of interest in. Now, how does your organization deal with this subject at the Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes, Baden-Württemberg? Thank you so much. I am not president. I'm Secretary General of our organization, of this organization. Thank you so much. Thank you for this invitation. Thanks for this great opportunity to exchange with you all here. We're also busy between the COVID, which really manifested itself and showed us how this world supply chain could be so problematic. And we also pinpoint certain weak spots. None of us were expecting this particular situation to occur. And for the European industrial sphere, it's almost an impossible situation. Now, right now, we've got this unimaginable crisis in Ukraine, and of course, is of utmost concern from a humanitarian point of view. But also, as well from a supply chain point of view. And this is going to be of great concern. So we thought it was very important that we address these issues, that we exchange on this point. How can we make our supply chains more resilient, sturdier, to resist better, stronger? How can we reduce our dependency on others? Unilateral dependence, reliance on energy, raw materials concerning Russia. Now, these are big, big questions, and we've got to find solutions and alternatives. This is a process that's already started up. One option to reduce this dependency, this dependent state, is most likely relocation in the country of origin of the company. Now, this necessarily means that you have to have favorable conditions on the ground at the point of origin, and we need attractive sites. We exchange regularly with our economy ministry, who's represented here today. And for us, really, what we want to do is to make Baden-Württemberg region as attractive as possible for the companies who used to be present there, so they will come back to our soil, and that other companies will want to move to our territories. So this means we need a competitive edge in terms of tax and fiscal measures. This is a question that is, of course, of national pertinence or remit in Germany. I'm sorry, there's some background noise there. Now, we need to work on logistics, on the infrastructure, energy, and in Baden-Württemberg, it has the highest energy prices, more than the rest of Europe. Now, we've got to move forward on these issues, and these are issues that we are dealing with the political powers that be. We've debated a lot on these questions of relocation or resettling. It's a question also of work share, or work division, to create conditions for our industry. Our industry is of greatest essence in the long term. So we have to rethink this reliance that we have on others in terms of logistics, in terms of supply, reduce this dependency, and create perhaps new supply chains.
We need to create a complementarity between the partners of our four motors. We need to probably do more on things like hydrogen. A lot of projects are already in place, and this is work in progress. However, we should be able to do more amongst the four motors here. Thank you very much, Mr. Secretary General. We have clearly noted this. We've understood through the various speakers here. You've all talked about the importance and the relevance of the European framework, the appeal, attractiveness, support the deployment of new technologies here. Now, the question I'm going to ask you all is a question that may be a bit of a conclusion or the new outlook here. For you, what position can we consider as being the new framework, and what's clearly the relevance here of this European cooperation within the four motors? As unfortunately, there's a lot of interference. Sorry, listening to you, Mr. Wolf here. Now, we are totally convinced that this European cooperation can play a major role here. The questions we are dealing have to be dealt with at European level. The past days and even the past years, these issues have become ever present here. Companies, and the companies I represent, are based in Baden-Württemberg. Most of them are German, but we've also got European companies. We are talking about imports, exports. We also have intra-European relations within the EU. And it's true that we perceive trade within the EU as being a foreign trade. We exchange with Lombardia, with Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes, and with Catalonia here. The exchanges are in place. So from a political point of view, certain factors are hindering cooperation, and we need to remove these barriers. And the four motors here have got a specificity. Their economic structure is very similar. Their infrastructures are similar. If we want industry to come back to our regions, it doesn't mean that we are going to live just within our regions here. And the idea is to work with other regions in Europe and to have a better cooperation and to have a close collaboration for Baden-Württemberg's industry and the German industry in general. We need to contribute to European sovereignty. 3 points: we need to strengthen our infrastructures, we need to develop technologies, for example, semiconductors and chips here. We also need to harmonize the conditions and the legal frameworks, and in particular, we need to focus on the cost of energy to make sure that we've got similar levels of competitivity. We need to diversify our energy sourcing here. We need to promote technology, electric mobility, digital energy transition. We need to no longer use coal or nuclear energy. And then finally, we need to create the necessary economic conditions for economic sustainability throughout Europe. This word sustainable is both from a social, economical, and environmental point of view here. We need to make sure we have the necessary conditions to meet climate challenges here. We need to strengthen the exchanges amongst our four regions here. We've got a big area around Mannheim with 40% of our Länder's industry. It's an exceptional industrial area within Europe here around Mannheim, and we strongly depend on the connection to the rest of the world, and we need cooperation, and we need a more European cooperation. So cooperation with Europe is crucial. It's essential for us. Thank you very much. Let's move on to Patrick Rapp. You've just heard Mr. Wolf talking about European cooperation. And the question is, what is the position of the four motors for Europe here? As a means of concluding this first part. Thank you very much for this question. Our four motors have been around for over 30 years now. The past years, this mechanism probably wasn't quite as important as before, and the issues we have faced, we're talking about the environment, the supply chain, energy, environment protection, digital transformation, labor. All that shows that within Europe, we need a kind of beaker here and a spirit to show that we can do things differently and not just continuously go for hyper-globalization. We can't relocate or reshore everything. We can't bring everything back to our countries, to our regions here. EU shoring is good, but we have to rethink and review Europe. We need to build new ways of working together. I'm originally from a company very close to the French border. 50% of our activity and of our exchanges was with the Alsace-Lorraine region of France. It was normal for us. It wasn't seen as export. It was a cooperation here. And that's how we need to see Europe. We need to mutually help each other. We need to use the strong points of the different regions so that together we can create within Europe, within the very core and heart of Europe, a momentum. Within, we need to value the four motors in terms of training, innovation, all those fields, all those areas we are very good at. We need to strengthen cooperation in terms of development and the other regions can look at what we are doing. We can create an example for other regions in France, Germany, Italy, Spain. Talking about labor and talking about bureaucracy, red tape, efficiency, and in particular, energy efficiency. Those are subjects we need to focus on. Also changing our supply chains, hydrogen. All we've got a definite responsibility. We need to go about things in a different way with a different mindset, but work as the heart of Europe. Here, it really, the four motors are supposed to be the spearhead for Europe. Now, Salvador Guillermo, we need a strong European framework to create a favorable situation. How do you see things?
Est-ce que vous avez entendu ma question?
Did you hear my question? Apparently not.
Des de Catalunya el que entenem és que és bàsica la cooperació.
We know this cooperation is crucial here, and it's crucial for us, Catalonia here. When we, with the various European treaties and Treaty of Rome in particular, we have seen a lot of success. We had been able to avoid war up to recently. Now, cooperation between regions, I think the four motors are need to be seen as tools. We need to strengthen the mechanisms between the local governments, regional governments, and national governments here. But it's mainly the regional governments where we can have a convergence in terms of our interests here. Our four regions have got a significant industry, but we also have to have a cooperation at entrepreneurial level here. The dimension of companies, and in particular, if we talk about SMEs, just like the United States have been able to do with by creating the necessary network and through means of incubation here. We've got companies that are quite competitive, but I think the different companies can help each other out, and even companies who aren't necessarily in competition with each other, the different companies can learn from each other. And here we are talking about clusters, about competitiveness clusters here, and I think they are an excellent way to move forward here. For example, how can we make sure that all these companies can learn from each other? The idea is also to make sure that we can drive costs down by working together, by sharing best practices. I think history has shown us that it's good to share, and we know that working together leads to added value, whereas in a situation of confrontation, we lose value. The most important is to have entrepreneurial growth policies, and that enables us to move forward, enables us to grow. Thank you very much for opening up here. Let's move back to Lombardio with Francesco Bugeda, your vision in terms of European cooperation. How do you see things, Mr. Buzella? My vision is cooperation needs to be seen at three levels, cooperation between nations and then between European regions or similar European regions facing similar issues, uh, but also cooperation in terms of industry here. Another very important cooperation has to be between public and private here. I mean, that is the key that's going to enable Europe to win. Innovation is another fundamental word here, but innovation has to drive us here and should enable us to be competitive in this globalized world here. Competition is healthy, but innovation will enable to have a competitive edge, and cooperation has always to be put first here. So we clearly need to reconquer the taste for entrepreneurship, and we need to see industry as a future here. Unfortunately, over the past decades, we have relocated our activities, industrial activities too much. We've lost the taste for innovation in the industry, which we had in the 1950s and 60s here, and even 70s. I mean, we should see Europe as being a kind of global industrial driver here. We need to make sure that we can reconquer a significant position. We had a strong industrial position in the past. We've lost this position, in particular over the past 20 years. Thank you. Thank you very much, Francesco Buzella here. Let's stay with Lombardia and let's move on to Guido Guidisi. Similar question, what's your vision, what's your opinion regarding the importance of a network like the four motors here? We're talking about reconquering and being a driver, being a motor as such.
Io credo che essendo noi quattro motori d'Europa, e lo dice la parola stessa,
we represent the four motors of Europe, and it's even the word is there. The future depends on us. The future generations depend on us in terms of the real economy here. The relationship can not just be a cooperation from a diplomatic and institutional point of view. We clearly need to have a tangible cooperation in terms of the real economy, in terms of attractiveness and appeal. And the idea is to reduce our dependency here. There can be a healthy relationship between the public sector and the private sector. In Lombardia, it's something we strongly believe in, and it's very healthy in terms of respecting our originality, and it should enable us to have a concrete and tangible cooperation and collaboration. It can be that of creating sales and commercial exchanges amongst us to improve connections amongst us here and their very links, to exchange training and research, and to make sure that production sectors work together, more so within the four motors. That means that each of us, we need to make available to others our added value, our own added value, so that we can improve the appeal and attractiveness of our territories from a manufacturing point of view, but also to be able to give a future to our youngsters here. And this concrete cooperation can exist can only exist if we meet each other more often and if we can schedule and program together the future here and every. I mean, the four motors can thus has a very strong and positive impact on European policies here, because we don't want to change the objectives of state policies. We want to participate and achieve neutrality from a carbon emission point of view. We want to have added value within our regions and our four motors. Thank you very much. Thank you, Guido. Jean-Luc Ronichier. Mr. Guidezi said that we need a concrete cooperation in terms of the real economy here. What's your vision? How do you see things, Mr. Ronichier? Europe is in fact the very first market in the world. It's the first economy here. Okay, there are 27 member states here, but it's the first economy ahead of the United States and China. The Europe we want, and which we wanted, which was also there to avoid war. The EU was there to avoid war. It was able to face many issues, but not all issues. To come back to what my colleagues have just said, there is a lack of tax and fiscal harmonization, social harmonization, or even energy harmonization. We can't immediately enter this debate in saying we are against or for nuclear energy. But if we were talking about the real economy, Germany, and it's not at all to stigmatize Germany, on the contrary here, but Germany, following Fukushima, they immediately decided to close down their nuclear plants here. Germany invested between 500 and 1,000 billion euros in alternative energies here, between windmills and photovoltaic panels, etc. But Germany is in a situation of total deficit from an energy point of view. They import 50% of their gas from Russia. Us in France, we import 17%, but we can see a high disparity, and Germany is happy just like Switzerland. And this isn't a criticism here. I mean, that's the reality of things. It's to put on the table the true topics and the true issues. If we want European harmonization, we have to focus on tax structure, social aspects, energy, and we all need to agree. Because let's face it, we're closing down the nuclear plants, but you're happy to have it. Thanks to French nuclear plants, you're happy to have electricity at a low price here. So it's there's a vast hypocrisy here. So we clearly need to put on table all the subjects here. Energy is one of these subjects. It's a very important topic. Suddenly we've got the summit of the 27. I don't belong to the summit of the 27. I'm an industrialist here. I mean, obviously nothing justifies the intervention of Russia in the Ukraine, but applying sanctions to Russia, we are the first victims, which is what is actually taking place. The first victims made the countries that even more so depend on energy coming from Russia, Austria, Germany, and other countries, and Finland, etc. here. So yes, it's good to be all together, but we need to put all the subjects here. It's if a country suddenly decides to close down their nuclear plants, but then afterwards, I refuse nuclear energy from coming from other countries. You have to be coherent and consistent here. And the industrialists who we happen to be here, we see real life, practical life, and that's the whole point, and that's the whole issue in having the four motors or the FEDER. We need to, François Hollande, the father here, François Hollande, closed down Faster 9. And just yesterday, François Hollande on television told us we need to totally stop gas coming from Russia. But he closed off the nuclear plant here. Well, anyway, that was a bit of a complaint from the employers actually association in the Rhône-Alpes region, Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes. I can see Stephanie Pernot who wants to react. Before I ask you for a word of conclusion, you at the very beginning were with us here. Have you got any reaction to everything we've heard so far before we conclude this part of our session? I'm really happy to hear what I've heard so far. The four motors, something that's very important for the Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes region. It definitely has a sense and a meaning. This cooperation is essential. We get together around fundamental issues which we all share. We are regions that are similar, and from an industrial point of view, we've got a definite common past history. We've got a definite conquering industrial territory, regardless of the region we're talking about, and this cooperation has taken place based on fundamentals which we share, which we are deploying within cooperation exchanges, research and innovation here. Pursue on what my colleague Jean-Luc Renichet was just saying, we're not just together by chance here. We are, and unfortunately, what's going on clearly shows that we need to do so. We need to get together and focus on what we share, our cooperation. We are dynamic regions, and by being together, we can create a momentum here. We can clearly beef up our industry, whereas when we talk about globalization, everything is scattered here, and we want to bring back industrial activities to our regions, economic activities that sometimes are hindered as it is now due to contrary decisions that have been made by the countries within the EU here. Now, just to draw something positive here, that's the fundamental reason why we want this strong cooperation between the four motors. It's not by chance, it's an encounter of regions that are similar, that have the same industrial history here and the same European history in terms of the opportunity to conquer markets at European level. And that's something that has to be restated during this session and in particular during these difficult times. Yeah. Then we're not talking about a fairy tale here where everything's great here, we're all alike here, we're all the same. We all have to deal with our intrinsic complexity within our regions and countries. And today, probably we weren't lucid enough here, and probably considering the complexity of our world, which has actually hit the initial image which we had of our post-war situation of what Europe was supposed to be. We realize today we need more coherence and consistency here. We shouldn't all be taking decisions in our own corner. We need, which is what Jean-Luc Renichet wanted to say in particular about nuclear energy. Either we're Europe that works together, that has an economic strategy, as we do within the four motors, the four regions, and then we can actually exist. We can develop a clear model, or otherwise we're going to be subjected to something because we will be scattered in terms of our efforts here, and where party countries will jeopardize our populations and our economies here. Stephanie Bernot, if there were just one word came to your mind to qualify the position of this network, the four motors, what's the strong idea for you here? Well, I think the four motors are a definite model in terms of long-term construction of an European ideal based on a given civilization, based on a common economic territory and area, and sharing skills in terms of innovation and training. Our economics are similar. Our economies are similar. We've decided to share our assets and to share them, and sometimes to confront them to see if other models may not be better here. We're not in the situation of competition, we're in the situation of cooperation. At the scale of our four motors, we're showing that if we all respect each other in terms of what we all are, and each region is entitled to exist as they are, when we have an alliance on particular issues here, we are sure that things will run smoothly and nicely. And us as the region Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes and our current presidency, if we can bring ourselves together and focus on what brings us together in terms of the similarities, we can only win. Thank you very much, Stephanie. You're going to stay with us. I mean, this webinar is going to continue. This is the end of our first part. I'd like to thank all the speakers for sharing their experience and policies. We're going to let go of Jean-Luc Renichet, and the next part we're going to have the official launch of the 4Motors Business Passport. Joëlle Seux is going to join us. She's going to be talking about this topic in particular. We're going to have Bruno Caveri, who's head of the Director of International Relations of Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes region. Thank you all for following us online, for following this webinar, and both the people who are physically present here and people online. So this is the second part of the session with the official launch of the 4Motors Business Passport. What are we talking about? What's the offer? And whom is it actually for? All the answers, we'll get them with our speakers here, and I'm going to introduce them to you. We got Joëlle Seux. Can you take your mic? Joëlle, thank you for being with us. You are director in charge of Europe and International for Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes enterprises here. Together with us, we've got Christophe Arnoul, Director for Funds of Axio, Catalonia Trade and Investment. Is Christophe with us? Is he connected? Yes, I'm connected. I can hear you. Fine, great. We can't see you, but still, we should be able to see you a bit later. Marco Fedato, Head of Investment Promotion Department for Invest in Milano. Marco Fedato, buongiorno. Yeah, buongiorno. Yes, he's online and finally to talk about this part. Claire Walter, the Regional Director for Western Europe, Baden-Württemberg International. Hello, Claire Walter, with a big smile. Yes, hello. Thank you for being with us. And Passport business here. This is official 4Motors Business Passport. It was launched today, the 10th of March here, and the companies can discover it here. Let's move on now to support companies and to write the companies and to value the assets of a territory, of an area. It's the mission as well of Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes Entreprise. Can you introduce your agency? We are the economic development tool of the Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes region. The region gave us 5 missions. There's one mission which we've heard a lot about previously, and that's the attractiveness. Invest with a dedicated team to the attractiveness of investments, be they French or foreign, and our 4 other missions are dedicated to companies who are located in our region. We are there to help them to develop, to find the necessary funds and investment to help them invest, to digitalize, to deal with industrial decarbonation here, which is what we call economic development. We are also greatly involved in, that was mentioned earlier on, focused on talent and attractiveness of talents and training. We also support companies in terms of innovation, mechanisms, the approaches, the networks here. And the last mission, which I'm particularly responsible for, access to European funds, so that with the other partners, we can implement innovative projects here.
Joëlle Seux, that we're talking about the passport. So talking about expectations, where are these expectations coming from? Where did they emanate? Well, as Vice President Meunier said, this is a cooperation that's 30 years old at least. And mainly it began with institutional bodies and the regions to have this become a living and breathing object. This network used their tools, applied their tools, which we represent, Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes Entreprise, and my colleagues as well, who will speak later on. We also wanted to work among ourselves. We set up a service benchmark, the services that we applied to each region to see what was possible to share or not. In other words, the companies of our regions could benefit from certain services that Axio, for example, would be providing from Catalonia, and other colleagues likewise. The idea here was to have a type of reciprocity, to be able to help others out and then barter back services to our companies or other companies in the 3 other motors, and in free fashion, free of charge. Now, to really understand what this passport involves, we often say a picture is worth 1,000 words. So here's the video.
Do you have international ambitions for your
Vous avez des ambitions internationales pour votre petite entreprise. Avec les 4 moteurs et son passeport, vous devez explorer des opportunités dans les régions les plus dynamiques.
Lombardy in Italy, Baden-Württemberg in Germany, and Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes in France? The Four Motors of Europe Business Passport offers SMEs coming from one of these regions swift and special free of charge access to the expertise of local partners in the other 3 regions. Are you seeking expert information about the markets you are targeting in one of these regions? Do you want to expand your business or open a new subsidiary? Are you looking for a technological or R&D partner, a new supplier, or commercial partner? The Four Motors of Europe Business Passport is a one-stop shop to help you go international. Reach out to your local points of contact and discover how the Four Motors of Europe Business Passport can support your project and save time.
Now, if I understand right, Joyce, this passport has a relay role to play towards ecosystems, connecting up ecosystems. Yeah, that's right. The 4 economic development agencies that we represent in the 4 motors, our role is to connect up companies to our ecosystems, connect to all other ecosystems that will allow for development. Now, one example, you have to have this passport as being a door, so a portal. So as you go in Rhône-Alpes, whatever door you take to get in, you're going to get access to the networks of each and every one of us. We talk about competitive clusters. Now we also might talk about research centers or technological transfer centers. We can talk about our various territories that want to welcome new companies in. We can talk about the France Export team members as well. So all of these various networks that we work with are therefore available to companies from the 3 other motors. Thank you very much, Jules. So we're talking about the passport, business passport, launched today for the 4 motors, launched today towards the international world with via these 4 motors. Let's look closely at some of these various services of this business passport with Christophe Arnoul at Axio Catalonia Trade and Investment. Now, Christophe, could you please present to us this Axio agency, its aims and vocations? Hi, everyone. Yes, hi. Really pleased to see you. Many people here, far and near. So I'm going to speak in Catalan. So we're using our respective territories' languages. Just simply a few brief words here about Axio before I explain the various services of this company passport or business passport. Axio Catalonia Trade and Investment is an agency for skill sets of companies in Barcelona headquarters, 40 offices throughout the world that gives access to more than 100 markets. Now, we're also established in France, Germany, and Italy. Next. Our agency is totally directed towards companies. Our aim is to increase competitiveness of our networks, company networks, being in the companies, concerning their company strategies. Accompanying this transformative challenge, the technological disruption, transfer of new technologies and development, as well in the form of partnerships. We work a lot with startups so that they will be able to work with big companies, majors. Now, we are an agent for internal globalization. As such, we help companies in Catalonia to get access to international markets by identifying business opportunities and by removing barriers and helping them establish themselves elsewhere. And as an agents of attractiveness, we should strengthen the attractiveness of Catalonia vis-a-vis others as a foreign investment terrain. Now, as Joël said at the beginning, our strategy is totally coherent with this business passport. Thank you. Here's the first service that we have among the main services in this passport framework. Market information that we provide to companies of our 4 regions so as to assess the potentialities and opportunities to seize. Now, let's one example in Rhône-Alpes, Auvergne, or Baden-Württemberg, or a company that needs economic and statistical information or about its own business sector in Catalonia. Via the passport, they're going to, free of charge, be able to access all necessary information. We have information that will be updated constantly. This will be made available to these companies who can obtain them by going through this door of the passport. The second service is linked to innovation. Here, what we propose to companies is an innovative service internationally to be able to identify R&D projects and innovation projects. Now, this is, let's say if there's a Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes company looking for a partner in terms of research and development or innovation in another region, let's say we could create a European consortium and offer a project to be able to obtain financing in the framework of the Horizon program. The other agencies are going to serve this channel so as to personalize the best partners for its project and customize. There are other services that are also offered. B2B meetings, connections to the regional councils, and access to the industrial or business networks. Thank you. Another service we provide is access to a network of suppliers in Europe so as to identify subcontractors in each of our 4 regions. We spoke about this earlier on, and that's the issue of today, this question of reshoring or relocation. Any company of our regions that is searching to reshore or EU shore in Europe can, via this service and via this passport, can identify in Catalonia, Lombardy, Rhône-Alpes, various subcontracting companies that might be of interest to them and that would agree to work with them so as to properly carry out their reshoring project. This service of getting people in contact with the ecosystem, this is what this passport will be used for, via local services, via the 4 agencies, the 4 motors of Europe. Now, these companies will be able to connect more easily to each of these different markets via actions with companies, via connecting to R&D centers, also get in touch with the public administrations of these areas. Any company which wants to use this passport and get access through this passport to various partners can get access to all information concerning the ecosystems of the 4 motors. It's very easy to partake of this ecosystem and everything is very streamlined. And then last of all, through this passport, what we also offer is another totally free service for companies who want to reshore or establish themselves elsewhere in another region. So these companies can get access to personalized advisory capacity so as to study and amplify and validate a project for moving into one of our 4 regions. Here we offer information that is totally personalized concerning costs of establishing oneself. We can also identify a location, in other words, industrial terrain, industrial offices. There's also a service to facilitate hiring. In a way, this is really full-fledged service for helping people, these companies, to establish themselves in our 4 regions. We do a prior study as well, of course, but we accompany these enterprises throughout all of their measures and the administrative steps, and looking for warehouses and for land in our 4 regions. So we shall see with our friends from Baden-Württemberg and Lombardy. We will be speaking about various examples of actions that have been undertaken in the previous 12 months. Christophe Arnoul, for this, thank you very much for these specific details about all of these services that are available via the passport. You're also setting up a transition here with Marco Fadetto, who's in charge of investments for Invest in Lombardy. So Marco Feddato, with him, we're going to talk about practical cases. But just before that, Marco Feddato, Invest in Lombardy helps companies position themselves and establish themselves in Lombardy. Can you tell us a little bit more about your agency and how it serves attractiveness or appeal? Good evening. Hi. I hope you can hear me. Hi. I will be speaking Italian. I'm so pleased to be here today. I'll be very brief. The meaning of what we do, you've understood already. And it's been explained by Guidesi and by my other colleagues as well. They explain very well the meaning of this passport of the 4 motors. Now in Lombardy, we're paying closer attention to serve companies, and we're talking to international companies. We're talking about international companies, but as well, we're speaking about the other regions of the 4 motors who are here, and also territory throughout the world. Now, this service was consolidated via our experience and different types of benchmarking. And we are strengthening these among the various territories of the 4 motors. Now, over the course of the year, we were able to fine-tune our services. Now, for us, this is really something that is a functioning service. Now, as you see this overview here, we accompany international actors or companies throughout all of the process. Now, we do have one single stop-off point, one single portal. Now, this is the one-stop shop service. Now, this is what we want today. You needed a single access point. Now, we also have competition among the territories. And this is getting more intense every day, and we need to accompany these enterprises. So we're really going to perform decisive actions in the territories. Also, I want to go back to what some of my colleagues said about the projects. For example, working with local institutions, it was very important to understand that there are great possibilities for reshoring or EU shoring. Now, when you are living through these critical periods of history, you've got to find your own solutions. And we really invested so much in Lombardy. We also have concrete results coming from this. As was said before, we were able to build up our own network in our territory of Lombardian communities that participate in the system. And they provide greater answers to demands of individuals. Many people have said that what really counts here too is the public-private cooperation that we have established. Our communities, local communities in Lombardy, do participate in these endeavors and in this sphere. Marco, thank you very much. Thank you. Relocate. Can you tell us about the success story, please? More. So I'm going to tell you directly what we've done and the examples that we were able to establish in this joint work among ourselves of the 4 motors. And we have this on this slide here. There's a service that we have built up. And this is in the framework of this project. For the passport of the 4 motors, we helped a French company. And they do manutention and moving. Here you see, not this page, sorry, not that page. There's a French company. Oh, that does maintenance on cars. I'm sorry, maintenance on cars. It's called Relocate. This company, this French company deals with maintenance on fleets of bikes. Now, this is a real sustainable development endeavor, and we really concretely helped this company and this action, starting from the basis of the market as far as their arriving at the potential to be able to establish greater opportunities in the market. In other words, opening up companies to the territory. And also we worked very closely with them. This is a concrete example that shows us how the 4 motors, I hope these examples will be able to multiply out through the various regions. But anyway, I do hope that we will be able to accompany many companies as we did with this one. Now, this is a company. This is a very up-to-date subject, which is sustainable mobility. We also are totally convinced that an integrative model is important for our region and for the other regions of those 4 motors. Therefore, we want to provide accompaniment throughout the 4 regions for this entire process. Now, we are really totally satisfied with this first example, and we have many more to tell you about. Now, Claire Valter, she's going to enlighten us about another example, another practical case as well, Western Europe, Western part of Germany. So tell us more about your agency, the Baden-Württemberg International Agency, and its aims. Hi, thank you so much for this invitation. Thank you. Yes, I do work for Baden-Württemberg International. And I direct the Europe service. I'm in charge of the 4 motors. I will present our activities rapidly to you from our agency, Baden-Württemberg International. We're an economic development agency for all Länder. And our aim is to expand the renown of Baden-Württemberg so that people will have an idea of what it is, so that people will be attracted, companies will be attracted to our region. Our main purpose is to help companies and also research centers to move on the international sphere, to attract talents, to attract new companies onto our territories. We also try to encourage activities throughout all of the rest of Europe. We give companies an access to our market at Baden-Württemberg. We can give you all types of information concerning our land. We can help you find partners or some interesting premises for our company. We also provide administrative assistance. We set up connections with all of the important players in our territory. A concrete example, it really exemplifies what we do. We're coming back to the business passport with you. Concrete example, tested, validated. This is Cookpack system you're going to talk to us about. Yes. We have no French to translate from. Some information now about the company. Corpac system. Yes. This company builds machines. 400 employees worldwide. We are specialized in the manufacturing and implementation of packaging machines, specialized packaging machines. We work very closely with their customers, with these customers. At the beginning of 2021, the company was searching for business partners to strengthen their activities throughout southernmost Europe. This is the slide you see here. So searching for partners, experimented, very, very motivated. So this company contacted us. We were able with them to identify this request as being something that was perfect to test this business passport out. We followed along the usual lines of what we do. Request for information, collect information about the company. We transferred this information to our contacts throughout the three other regions. These colleagues began to work then, and they also sought out information and they sought out partnerships in their own respective regions. A study, for example, was carried out on the packaging line industry and all of the companies that could be relevant for this field. They looked for information on the clusters as well that could be effective. Now, each agency therefore harvested information about their own region so as to help the company out. And this information was conveyed to Koch, K-O-C-H. The Koch company was so happy about all of these contacts that we were able to provide to them. And in very little time, very briefly, very quickly, they were able to get access to really useful information. In-house, they also studied this information more closely, and many interviews took place thanks to the contact information that we had sent them. And here we have it on the screen. Then Koch decided to concentrate on Spain because in France they are well represented already. And also in Italy, there's so much competition in this particular field. So Koch was able to concentrate on a number of potential partners in Spain, in Catalonia. And exchanges took place and continue to take place, negotiations as well concerning potential partnership with a Spanish company, Matic, I think she said. So Coop had really found what they were looking for. They're so happy with the result and the effectiveness of this procedure. It was very quick for them and very effective. And it's a great example that we are proud of the role that can be played by this passport and of our work of setting up networks and setting up connections. So it's a very quick and shining example of what we do and how we are able to work with companies. Yes, you want to talk about passports and tested and validated, or tested and approved. So it's very important when you talk about partners and networks, and it's very important when you're talking about the international field as well. We're staying with all of you, but as a conclusion, I want to ask this question to all four of you very briefly. And if we had just to retain one strong idea or one strong element about this business passport for these four motors, what would be the idea that you want to promote or speak about? So, Claire? What we should, point out is that we are experts. We're local experts. We know our regions perfectly. And all we want to do is to help companies so that they can be effective and go as quickly as possible to the international field. Now, really, don't hesitate to contact us if you've got an international or globalization project, if you've already started your project out, but you want to speed things up, we're there for you. Germany, and then Lombardy. Thank you, Germany. Now to Marco in Lombardy. One strong point. So I have two things, one for companies. Speed is really of utmost importance. Speed of reply. A speed of contact and a single a one-stop shop on this very big field. Now, the other word I'd like to give here for you agencies is collaboration or joint work. So to show how we can work together, how we can partner up, and we compare ourselves on institutional interventions, on elements that we have concrete elements as well. And this is what's used by all of our agencies so that we can improve and enlarge. Thank you very much. Now, the Mediterranean area as well. Christophe Anou in Catalonia, your conclusion about this passport on the full motors. I'm going to give you just a single word, and the word is connection. Because really, this passport is the result of joint work among our 4 regions, our 4 agencies, and it's this connection among ourselves that's so great. So really, we can enjoy this connection and allow others to benefit from it, from these 4 regions, so we can have even more connections in every region. So connect up with us and you'll be connected to everything else. You'll have great opportunities to seize, great opportunities in every region of the 4 meters. Now, thank you very much. And here's the connection. I'm going to pick this right up as it flies past on the back to Joël Seux at the Rhône-Alpes, Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes region. To conclude, I'd say about this passport, for the last 2 hours, we've said what we're attempting to do is to reboost European sovereignty. And for me, the passport is truly an ideal tool. It's concrete, it's quick, and it's free of charge for companies, and it's based on the efficacy of the 4 agencies. So use it joyfully. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your conclusions regarding this business passport. We've reached the end of this live session. We've talked a lot about attractiveness, industrialization, about reshoring. We just talked about the business passport here. Bruno Chagrin, you're Director of International Relations of Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes. What are the main points you'd like to retain? I'd like to thank all the people who were involved here, the general consuls from Germany, Italy, and from Spain. I'd like to thank them, and also the general consuls in the respective countries, the consul generals. Thanks to them, all the people who were involved from the business clubs, but also the external trade advisors, the export teams, and also the agency with its partners, and also the economic development department, and also my team members, without whom nothing would have been possible. An important aspect of 4 motors, we're talking 1,600 euros in terms of GDP. It's really 16% of the EU GDP. We are opening up a new page, we're writing a new page, but it's a network that works without any administrative structure. Everybody monitors and steers the network based on their priorities. We haven't got any head costs here, any overheads. I know the folder, it's exactly the same for the folder in terms of the professional association. Very important, the Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes what's important for us. But concretely, we're talking about 220 companies within the region that are within the four motors. Every year, 500 apprentices participate, over 300 people with the grants meet up, and many encounters, business encounters. What I retain, number one, we moved from an approach, four motors. We are now four beakers and four flagships to show what the future of Europe can be here. We are clearly going to enlighten the industrial future of Europe, and to be perfectly concrete, this taste for reconquering our future, our industrial future, requires two elements. Number one, and that's what I clearly retain, we need to be much more active amongst ourselves on a B2B basis to be able to identify the supply chains, the common issues we face, facilitate the work between the companies within the four motors, but not just within the four motors, but we need to be much more active and proactive and reactive in terms of the encounters of the business executives and managers. And the second element, we should not be subjected to, it's what Stephanie Bernard said, we don't want to be subjected to here. That means two things. We have to be much stronger amongst ourselves within our national frameworks. We are going to have to be much more proactive as well, voice our opinions within the framework imposed upon us by our governments. And the second element, and that's probably something very important for Antoine Leroux and his teams, and for the four motors, we need to voice our role in Brussels here. We are the beaker that's going to enlighten everything here. We need to show what has been done and what can be done in the future. We have to have a perspective approach, which is going to be very important from an industrial future point of view regarding our four regions. There we go. So really a beaker and really a flagship here. Thank you very much, Mr. Chiaro-Vereni. I'd like to thank all the speakers, those present here and those people online. I'd like to thank the speakers from the four motors, the many participants that stayed online and were connected, and partners that are present here in this assembly. Thank you for your presence and your attention. I'd like to thank the technical team, the interpreters, and the Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes team here. And this webinar can be found on the replay function here, and also on the four sides of the four motors here, and also on the website of the Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes region. Thank you very much and have an excellent end of day. Thank you.